Hey everybody, we're up in the train room. We're going to look at some pictures today. You've heard me mention in a lot of my videos about the big Amtrak survey that I was involved in 1984. Some of it I chronicled in the September 2009 issue of Trains magazine, which rapidly flew off the shelves because of my article. Well, maybe like 10 copies, people I know. But I'm going to talk about some of the pictures that I sent that didn't make it, and just talk about it just for a few minutes because some people have asked me about it because it was a dream job. So it's called Riding the Rails with Riley, and Riley Cumberland was a good friend of mine on the trip. We had met. Trains bought three of his photo. Well, I don't know who made them. They were his wife Diane sent them to me. Riley died just after this was published, just unexpectedly in his 50s up in West Virginia. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But this is the article, and there's some photos there. I don't want to get any copyright things because Trains owns them, and I've got a bunch of copies here. But we'll go ahead and start and look at some of these that didn't quite make the cut. So this is my friend Billy Crow. He called himself Buffalo Bill. This is on the back of car T2 and T4, which were Federal Railroad Administration test cars. You can see it's chart paper that we kept track of the track geometry, and basically we would just find defects and the chart paper would track where it was, and then the host railroads that Amtrak ran over would go fix them. In our own low-tech way, this is how we kept track of where we were. It's the center map from an Amtrak magazine, and we simply kept track where we were. We've already been to the Northeast. We've been to Chicago. We've been down to New Orleans. We went out to LA on the Southwest Chief. We've been up the Coast Starlight. And if this is accurate, which we tried to keep up, we're up in, either Idaho or Montana, real close up there. So we worked 12-hour shifts, and when you worked 4 to 4, either 4 a.m. or to 4 p.m., and when we would come off, you stagger into the car here, grab a cup of coffee, and then say, "Where the hell are we?" And then you'd look up and see where we were. So almost all these photos were taken by Riley Cumberland, and he sent them to me so that we could get them into Trains magazine way back in the early 2000s. But this is T2, and there are new inspection cars, obviously. But this was at Minneapolis somewhere. Yeah. And here's the view from the rear of T2 being shoved around the Salt Lake City Union Pacific Station platform, which doesn't exist anymore because if you saw my videos from the summer, it's a big shopping complex and all that, and you got to go a couple blocks to find some train tracks. But there's a UP, probably SW1500 shoving us around. There's a look down the aisle of our galley car and our tool work car. A bunch of us sitting there. So I said, "Hey guys," and we looked up. There's a night view of that Southern Pacific or Union Pacific moving us around Salt Lake City. That's Paul Poteet. He was our survey director for ENSCO. It's the one and only time I ever saw him in a suit. And that was, I think, September 4th, 86, when we first started. We went zooming up the corridor from Washington, D.C. and started a couple months of sheer madness. So we'll go out to the other coast. This is when we were tacked onto the back of the Coast Starlight, and looks from where the ocean is outside the windows. We are heading southbound, and that's our friend Bobby Gibbons. He died in 85, and we're back. He's talking with some FRA folks on the back of the Coast Starlight heading south. Sounds like the Chewy order is here at the door. So we'll go to the middle of the country, obviously Chicago coach yards. Riley put a note on the back that T2 and T4 had just come out of the wash racks. So nice and clean there. I was able to borrow, my mom worked for Amtrak at the time, And I was able to borrow her white supervisor's hard hat. Now, I may or may not have ordered some people around in the coach yard to get those guys from the Federal Inspection Survey to get those cars watered and maybe get some supplies put on board. It may or may not have happened. And those F40s had moved their consists, and you can see a variety of superliners and even the older Santa Fe double cars or double-decker cars in that view. All of this survey started September 84 and this particular one ended in December of 84. And I didn't feel like going deep into the files and finding my expense reports and saying what day it was, but it was between September and December of 84. And just another shot in the coach yards of Chicago. T2 and T4. Sears Tower as it was then, back in the distance. That was cold, so we were probably getting closer to November, December. We went through most of these cities multiple times because we ran on every route that Amtrak traveled in the United States. And we usually went multiple ways, or multiple directions. So we put a lot of mileage on. Yours truly at the console. I wore that jean jacket constantly. It was actually perfect because it's always cold at night on the trains and protects you from the scrapes and stuff on the outside. And you could also keep 4 cans of RC in the inner pockets to try and stay awake because I wasn't a super coffee drinker yet, but this trip turned me into one. You'll notice the mask up above. You'll see that next. My friend Riley at the console, he was our resident prankster, and I miss him. Since the lighting is terrible, I probably took this shot of Riley just with the Dutch open. It says in the vestibule between T2 and T4, just enjoying life. If I remember right, this was heading out of Denver, heading up to Moffett Tunnel and over to Salt Lake City. Yeah, he took a shot of me looking out the window. So I think we were getting up into the Big Ten curve, I believe. It was a long time ago. So that's from the head end, looking back at T2 and T4 stuck on the back of the Zephyr heading out of Denver. And imagine that when we came out of the tunnel, it was snowing. Interesting view, a little farther away from the tunnel as we head out to Denver and Rio Grande. If I remember right, we were heading to Salt Lake City and they had gotten 2 to 3 feet of snow, and it was the end of October. So we bought winter gear and we're ready for the trip over. Beautiful up there. Yeah, before all that cold weather, we had super hot weather. We're here at Kansas City Union Station. If I remember right, it was well over 100, and it was the air conditioning. We had a Santa Fe dorm car, and the air conditioning wasn't the best. That was a hot day, I think. One of the smoothest riding engines I was ever in was this Union Pacific SD40. I'm looking out the rear window to the lead F40 of the Pioneer. We're leaving Portland Union Station. You can see the big go-by train up on the clock tower. And we were heading up into the Blue Mountains. And that SD40 rode like a Cadillac. F40s were basically a hot-rodded GP40, and they bounced up and down. They bounced sideways. And I had sore ribs for months because I would usually stand as the forward observer in the nose of the lead locomotive, which is awesome for a rail fan. And I would call back grade crossings, any switches, turnouts, mileposts, anything that they would need to mark on the chart paper, and anything that would break the sensors that we had hanging down below the rails on our test cars. That was a beautiful ride up the gorge and then out over the Blues. And while I was working hard in the lead SD40, Greg Twitchell, Paul Poteet, can't tell who's behind him, and then Riley are enjoying adult beverages in the club car. The rule was a Budweiser for every hour you needed to sleep. Lounge car on the Zephyr between Salt Lake City and Truckee, according to Riley's notes on the back. I thought it had been one of the SP 3/4 domes because the coloring in that, but anyway, it looks different. Yeah, there we are. What a crew. So I wrote this story for trains way back, like 2002, 2003, and they bought it. And then it took years and years to get published. And then finally, my editor, Angela Pistocchi-Pasternak, uh, she worked with me. We got it done, and sent me the PDFs, approved it back and forth, fact checked it back and forth, and came out in September 2009. I got a note back later from his wife, Riley, that he had passed away unexpectedly on a camping trip in West Virginia, and when she got back home, there was a pile of mail in their house. They have a mail slot, and in it she found the article. So that was pretty cool. That she saw a picture of her wild man. I wish I would have taken more pictures. I made the conscious decision not to, just enjoy it. But now, man, 30 years later, I sure wish I had a lot more pictures.